Good afternoon.
I'm Tallie.
Abigail.
I hope I'm not keeping you from something.
I'm glad you've come. Meeting you has made my day.
Well, how pleasant and uncommon it is to make someone's day.
Watching this movie, I was struck once again by the lack of choices that women had in years past, and frankly, don't always have in a lot of places now. Like, for instance, Katherine, you were like, yeah, Dyer seemed like a good dude. Do you know what I mean? Like,
he was the oldest son of my neighbor, right? So he was the available man. Yeah.
Especially in these really small communities, like there weren't
That's right.
a lot of available men.
Exactly. So you just resort to something that isn't dissimilar to arranged marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was sort of wondering, like, I mean, obviously you weren't in an anachronistic world, like, you know, you'd have your cell phone in your pocket or whatever, like you weren't existing in this time frame. What struck you sort of most about playing this time or thinking about women in this era?
I think it hit me first when I read the script, and probably was one of the things that was most attractive to me about going to do this film and going to tell this story was just, well, obviously the film explores many of the hardships women at that time faced. But one positive thing that really struck me, I suppose the positive aspects of solitude, being able to, I don't know, kind of uninterrupted follow a thought through to its natural conclusion. We live in such a fragmented time today. And when I read the script and I heard this person's inner voice, I thought, my God, take me to a time and place where I can think like that and be in a kind of, I don't know, much more engaged way with the natural world. And I was very keen to explore kind of slowing down. And that was very attractive to me. And so, yes, we had our cell phones, but my God, they barely worked up there in those Romanian mountains anyway. So, and we all lived there together, you know, only about a mile from where we shot. And we didn't leave that mile of land for the duration of the shoot. So, you know, it really did help us to feel, I don't know, free of the constraints of our time.
There was simultaneously a lot to do. Like you were busy, but also you had nothing to do. Like
That's
now,
right.
If I want to read a book, I can go to the library and get it, or go to the store. And this, it was like, what books are available to you? Is there a book merchant coming through?
Yes, we were just saying like the Atlas was the most thrilling thing that had happened in years. Right. Do you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't believe that actually when you really started to imagine the nothing to do-ness, you know, and yet the things you have to do are the things that you just must in order to survive. Essentially, like you don't have choices of the things that might light you up or make you feel inspired or get closer to who you are, you know, and find your passions. Like there's none of that. It's literally like if you actually get on with someone that lives nearby, that's like, which happens just for this brief moment in their whole lifetimes, you know, you're lucky. But, you know, there were so many accounts of women whose husbands, they've been married off to the local neighbours, you know, whoever's. And then that man might choose to move really far away. So they never ever saw their family again, even, you know, because it's just too far to travel on that frontier. And so your husband got chosen for you. And then you literally just
he's all you got.
He's all you've got. And really who he is luck of the draw. Like I thought it was interesting with Tallie and Finney, like, how did they end up together? Of course, they didn't have a choice. And actually, they're so not suited, even in personality, you know, for who she is. And I always saw her as like such a sort of modern energy in a way, you know, who really like should be with someone that like really lights her up, and she, you know, like Abigail does, and where they
or isn't threatened by her light.
Yeah, totally.
Or imagine if she lived in New York, or do you know what I mean? Like I can imagine
even in those days. yeah,
yes. Like in a more, even like in a you know, a Philadelphia or something, like a smaller city or something. I could imagine
totally.
Her really thriving.
And it made me think about like all the women who had those kind of natures, you know, who wanted to think way bigger than the things they had in front of them, didn't want to settle for just what they had. And yet the risk of doing that was the risk of, you know, really angering a husband who's, you know, just made decisions on everything, or, you know, or you couldn't even communicate properly with. Just think about all those women from all the centuries before us who wanted so much more and were you know, so rarely sort of probably were able to even have any of it.
Yeah, I mean, something I was wondering when I was watching this was like, was there ever a possibility of a happy ending for these women? Like in the sense of like, they couldn't, you know, they had no money. They couldn't like run off and do their own thing. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have a lot of choices. So like, even if somehow, you know, everything had worked out great in their favor, I don't know how happy their ending could have been.
I mean, I'm always talking about this line, my voiceover line, one of my voiceover lines, which is like, ever since I was a little girl, I was like a pot-bound root all turned in on itself. And there's so many ways to sort of, that you could apply it to this story, you know, like if they're pot-bound roots, if society is the pot in this case, where are they to go with their potential and their love? There are bounds to what's possible for them. I suppose there's a scenario where, you know, they murder Finney, and I feel like Dyer would have probably tolerated it because he actually was a quite a supportive husband, wishing his wife to be happy. I think he maybe he could have tolerated them carrying on together, but the actual life that they long for, the actual freedom that they long for, and the contribution to society, to the world that they feel they have it in them to give, the intellectual stimulation that they desire, I don't think they could have gotten anywhere near that.
So there's this sort of trope in films of like star-crossed lesbians, and it's that one or both sort of always die at the end. And not to give away anything about your movie, but is this something that you guys were conscious of and like thinking about, like, you know, lesbian movies have a tendency to be sad?
I think we talked a lot about owning, you know, this element of American history that isn't limited. I mean, you know, is outside of the sort of, that extends beyond the trope of lesbian star-crossed lovers, but it has more to do with the reality of domestic abuse and unchecked, those unchecked abuses at that time. We talked a bit about something that really struck me, Heidi Schreck's show, which I saw live, but I think is now on Netflix, what the Constitution means to me, and how, like, in her grandmother's town, she was going through all the old newspapers. It was just a weekly event that there was some report of somebody murdering their wife, but that went unchecked. I think it's a really important part of our story if we're trying to own these untold American stories that focus on women and what happened to them, to acknowledge that this was a frequent occurrence.
Astonishment and joy. Astonishment and joy.